Okay, let's get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Ariana Blizzy. I'm with the Federation of Community Councils, and I'm really excited to introduce our lovely partners from AMATS. But before we do that, just really quickly going to review the group agreements. Our group agreements today are that this is a space for learning and conversation among members of community councils and the public. The goal of these sessions is to dive deep into various governmental structures within the municipality of Anchorage. As a reminder, we're treating each other with respect, we're recognizing our neighborhood's unique qualities, and we're giving everyone a chance to participate. Some Zoom logistics, please stay muted unless you're called on. Uh, Feel free, especially in a smaller group, to drop your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand. Questions will be taken after the presentation is over. Please try to stay on topic and be concise, and then considerate of the time. We will be ending today at an hour. So, with that being said, I want to welcome our lovely presenters from AMATS. We have Christine Schutte and Aaron Yanganalen. And I went through it a couple of times, and I probably butchered his last name. They're going to provide us with some information and a presentation, and then we're going to come on to questions and all of that. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. And you did fine on my last name, so thank you very much for that. Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron. I'm the Executive Director and MPO Coordinator for AMATS. Christine?
At
Ooh. Ooh. Really?
AMATS, we
Christine.
bring people and organizations.
Looks like Christine's having some problems with our presentation today. Let me see. So while she's doing that, Christine, are you unmuted?
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
It just okay. So it'll mute me when I'm sharing my audio. So I'll tell before I share the audio to play this video, I'm just cue it up that we just created a 90-second explainer video. We're really excited to unveil it for you. Kind of says everything that AMATS is and does in this little graphical story. So we're going to play that for you now.
At AMATS, we bring people and organizations together to shape investment and make sure a share of federal transportation dollars gets spent right here. As the agency overseeing federal funding for roads, transit, and pathways in the region, we work with state and local partners to study how people travel today, anticipate what our communities will need tomorrow, and make sure projects support safety, clean air, and community goals. You'll see our work in the Transportation Plan. This 20-year plan is our big picture roadmap. We update this plan every 4 years. All research that we do, whether about biking, safety, or freight, helps to inform the next update of the Transportation Plan. The 4-year funding program pulls projects directly out of that big picture roadmap and lists what gets built or fixed next. And the work program outlines the planning tasks AMATS staff and industry partners will work on over the next 2 years. These plans guide transportation planning in the region, but AMATS needs you. Get involved by attending AMATS committee meetings, signing up for email or text updates, sharing with your community council what transportation projects are needed in your neighborhood. Get started today.
So we're really trying to get like more common ways of speaking about AMATS because we are a pretty complicated group. So it's our first try with the video. We're really excited to share it with you all, and of course, as we grow and do more, we'll do more things like that. So that was just a quick explainer video. Now I'm going to go into a little more detail about AMATS. A lot of this stuff I'm going to talk about is kind of already part of the video, so just kind of bear that in mind. So what is AMATS? We are a Metropolitan Planning Organization. So we are a federally required organization when jurisdictions become densified enough. So a certain number of people per square miles, certain number of houses in an area. Basically, it's a way for local communities, local governments, state agencies to come together and coordinate transportation planning. So what roads, pathways, what transit, things like that are built in the communities. MPOs really started back in the 60s because the federal government and even state DOTs were coming in and putting transportation projects in typically low income and minority populations and disproportionately impacting those individuals. So MPOs are kind of that oversight group that says, should we be doing this plan or this project here? And we do a lot of that analysis via transportation planning. So AMATS itself actually serves the Anchorage Bowl, Chugach, Eagle River, and the native village of Eklutna. So we are not the entirety of the municipality of Anchorage, but we cover the vast majority of it. So kind of like what is the structure and what is the makeup of AMATS? Because it can be a little confusing to people. So the overall way to think about this is AMATS is a large group, but really the central authority is the policy committee. So they are the final decision makers. It is made up of a 5-member committee. There are 2 assembly members on there. There are 2 state representatives, and then there's a representative from the Municipality of Anchorage Mayor's office on there. So they make the final decisions on everything that we do and what projects are funded in our transportation improvement program. Then we have the Technical Advisory Committee. So it's the group that's made up of technical experts from the Municipality of Anchorage and the Department of Transportation, as well as Parks and Rec and some other groups that basically do a cursory review of all of the products that we deal with or anything that goes to the policy committee and says, okay, from a technical perspective, here's kind of our recommendation to you. It's really that idea to give the policy makers the policy level and then the technical level. Then we have some subcommittees. We have the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Community Advisory Committee, and then the Freight Advisory Committee. So these are the subcommittees where the communities are really invited to participate, where open seats are, and to have their voice heard. That information that's developed as part of our subcommittees is filtered up through the Technical Advisory Committee to the Policy Committee. Then we have staff. So there's myself as the coordinator. Then we have 4 senior transportation planners. So we have the transportation plan coordinator, we have the freight mobility coordinator, we have the non-motorized coordinator, and public involvement coordinator. Sorry, freight and model coordinator. Next. Okay, so there are 3 core functions that we have listed here. There's a 4th one that Christine will talk about in a little bit. So the 3 that I wanted to talk about here is our transportation plan, which is typically known as the MTP. That's our 20-year vision. So what projects, what transportation projects are we anticipating funding over the next 20 years? What goals and objectives do we have as an MPO? And those are typically made up of information from the local side of things and the state side of things that come together and say, here's what we would like the transportation system to look like. We have to update it every 4 years. That's a federal requirement. So we're never not updating it. Our next update is actually going to get started here within probably a few months. So be on the lookout for that. We'll obviously send out information to the FCC and everybody else about it. So that's just a quick heads up. Then we have our funding program, which is known as the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. That's a 4-year funding program. So it draws from the short term funding of the MTP and says, okay, over the next 4 years, here's how much money you get per year. It's about $50 million for AMATS. And then we have money from DOT and others that go into it and says, here are the projects we're going to do over the next 4 years. So it's just the next, I mean, think of the MTP as the umbrella, and then the TIP is the implementation of that umbrella aspect. Then we have our work program. So that's what we as staff do every 2 years. And it's basically just keeping track of all the tasks that we do on a regular basis. And then we have coordination with partners in the public, and that'll be part of the public participation plan that Christine will talk about in a minute. Okay, projects. So this is a really big one, just so people kind of really understand what it is. This is one of the core things that we do is put funding towards projects. And these will be ones that you typically see in the TIP, and it's a mix of federal, state, and local funds. It's predominantly federal funds with just a little bit of local and state for matching of federal dollars. We are heavily dependent upon federal dollars in our state, and so that's why you'll see most of it in federal in our program. One of the key things to remember about the funding program is it must align with the transportation plan. So, like I said, the transportation plan is that umbrella. You must select projects that are in that umbrella to fund in your funding program. And the reason for that is you want to make sure that the projects that you developed as part of that umbrella are the ones you're implementing and not some random things that just get thrown in. It's really to help with like limiting the political push or the political side of things. Then we have air quality conformity that is required in some areas. This is basically everywhere that receives federal funds, they are required to adhere to air quality requirements. So you have to make sure that your projects that you're implementing are not going to degrade your air quality or worsen it for certain particulate matters. Dust and wood smoke are the predominant ones for Alaska, but you also have CO. And so what we have to do is we have to do analysis in certain locations to determine if our projects are going to be an impact for air quality. So that is a requirement because we are a non-attainment area, which basically means back in the day, we had an exceedance of air quality, and we are now kind of more strictly watched for air quality for the projects that we do. I'm happy to share that we recently got out of our non-attainment status for CO. So we are clear of the CO, and that's amazing. And then we are on our way to getting clear of the PM10, which is dust particulate matter in Eagle River. I will say it is very rare for an MPO to move out of its non-attainment status. So we're one of the few in the country that have been able to do that. So pretty proud of that. Okay, Christine, it's you.
Right. And so, yeah, like Aaron said, I will talk about the public participation plan. I think back when we released the update to this plan, that's when we were invited to do a local lens. It covers everything that AMATS is and does. It's kind of set up in 3 main sections. We really did our best to write it in plain language. In the This is AMATS section, there is an executive summary, there's a geographical boundary of AMATS. We can outline the planning goals that we have, and then an overview of the federal process. In the product section, it goes into more detail about those plans and programs that Aaron just outlined for you. And then in the how to get involved, it's exactly that, how folks in the community can engage with us. You can download a copy of the plan using that QR code or the link provided in the slide. So the plan's purpose, every MPO has public participation plan. It's to explain the MPO process, the AMATS process, guide public participation, and then expand outreach with each planning task. So each plan or program, or we do other plans that aren't those core plans throughout, that'll be outlined in our work program. Each different project that we do will have its own engagement scope, but this plan is kind of like the umbrella plan that kind of guides the standard procedures that we will follow. And in this one, we've outlined some goals starting on page 11. So 11 through 13, we have goals that are outlined, goals, objective measures, and targets for public involvement. And we laid them out using performance-based planning, which means that every goal will have an objective, every objective will have a measure, and every measure will have a target. And that's so that we can track progress and improve our efforts moving forward. Some main engagement tools that we use, we have an engagement hub um, from the public input platform, and all projects will have web pages on this hub, and they'll all have their own email or voicemail hotline. It kind of can give us more of a consistent look and feel for AMATS projects moving forward, so that there's kind of a what to expect from us, and you can sign up on that platform for notifications by either email or text for the specific projects that you're interested in. For meetings, all AMATS meetings are hybrid or virtual. They're open to the public. We record them so that you can either attend at a location of your choosing if it's virtual, or if you can't make it, you can still have access to the information at a time that works best for you. And then some of our standard outreach that we do, we have a website, we have with an email list. Again, you can sign up for that on public input to decide what you want to get notified. We have social media accounts through Facebook, Instagram, and X. And then we started in 2021, we started a quarterly newsletter. And that's kind of a great way to get kind of a condensed, they're not too long. They're Esri story maps, just everything that's AMATS staff and AMATS committees have been working on for the quarter. In the back of the plan, starting on page 41, we have these at a glance guides. So they're just graphic, quick references that people can tap into. This one is a typical project comment timeline, public comment timeline for different projects. We have if you're trying to remember when AMATS committees meet, their standard schedule, we have that in these guides. And then there's each one for those core programs and plans that Erin outlined, kind of the timeline for when we do updates to those plans. And then, so how to get involved. Again, on public input, you can subscribe to our list. You can also scan that QR code if you're seeing it on our screen. We have on the main AMATS webpage, you can find a link to the platform. You can find a comment box if you just have a comment that you want to leave outside of a comment period, or it's just on your mind. That's just www.muni.org/AMATS. We have a voicemail and an email that's just, again, outside of a comment. So if you're on a specific project, there's always going to be an email, or you can email Erin or I or any of the staff. But if you just have something that's on your mind at a specific time and you can't remember anybody's specific emails, these are just kind of the general voicemail box and email box for AMATS. And then I just wanted to flag something we have going on right now is a household travel survey. So we've been sending out mail to folks at their homes, and you might have, it's randomly selected, so you might have received one. If you did, we would love for you to fill that out. We do this survey every 10 years or so, so filling it out helps to ensure that your travel habits are represented in the data that we use to make important transportation decisions. And with that kind of highlights, I think, what we were going to say today. We want to say thank you. These are the AMATS pets all together saying thank you. And I will stop sharing so we can have time for questions.
Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your time and that video. If you have any questions with us today, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. I'll kick us off with a question. Can you guys give us an example of some of the projects that have been funded through this process? Maybe something residents might be familiar with right now?
Yeah, there's some a variety. I can give you a whole handful of things. So, on like the smaller scale, we have things like the Fish Creek Trail connection that's being worked on right now, the downtown to coastal trail connection that is going to be starting construction next year, which we're really excited about. So, we have some trail systems like that. We also have some road projects. So, one of the more noticeable ones, we have the Spinard Road Rehabilitation Project that is underway right now, and then Fireweed Lane rehabilitation as well. Um, we also have transit projects that we help to fund. We as AMATS provide a chunk of funding to transit for bus buy, as you know, replacing their buses, as well as bus stop improvements or bus stop anything that they need. In addition, any additional funds we have, we typically put towards transit for any of their efforts because it's one of the essential things. For example, we have put money towards starting new services or new routes. Now, we can't continually fund that on an ongoing basis, but we can get it started and then the Muni can take that over. And then there's some larger scale projects that are part of this process as well, like national highway system projects that DOT does. So the Safer Seward Highway, if any of you have heard of that project, the 36th Avenue interchange, for example. There's also railroad funding through here, transit funding for railroad that's put in there. And then we have discretionary grants. So, for example, if you've heard of the Burgaw Street Safe Streets for All project that they're going to be doing, where they're going to be looking at making some changes to Burgaw Street in the effort of safety. So it's a pretty large amount of variety that can be part of our program.
Got it. Thank you. We have a question in the chat. How do the people mover plans link in?
Um, well, it depends. So the hard part about transit is we can't really fund it that much for the operations side. We can do the capital side. So typically, as I said, bus buying and things like that. So, or we can help them get a new route started. The people mover plans really come into play for our long range plan or our transportation plan, the MTP, where we basically say, okay, what are they proposing over the next 20 years? What kind of routes are they going to be looking at? And what does that do to the transportation system? You know, how many people are going to be driving? How many people are going to be taking transit? And it feeds into what kind of projects are selected as part of that process based on kind of what they're anticipating and what their needs are.
Got it. Thank you. Kelly, do you have a question?
I do. Hi. So, are you familiar with the Reconnecting Fairview efforts that are going on? Are
Mhm.
you part of that? What's AMATS involved with in that area?
So we're part of it in the sense that right now we're participating in the with the project team or with the group RUP and NeighborWorks, and just kind of seeing where things are going for that. Until a project is really fleshed out a little bit more, it's harder for us to do anything. There is a project that's related to that, and that's the Hyder Street Pedestrian Boulevard.
Hmm.
AMATS is actually funding the portion from 15th to 5th Avenue to get that project started. That's in the draft funding program. So we're also part of the Seward to Glen PEL team. So we're aware of what's going on with that. And basically, if they want anything funded federally out of that, it has to go through the AMATS process. So that's why we're kind of watching what's going on and giving our feedback where we're asked for.
Fantastic. I have just one little comment too. Sorry. I was one of the chosen people for the transportation survey. And I tried actually to go on it the next day, after I did my transportation. And it was really cumbersome, and honestly, I couldn't fill it out. It wouldn't let me populate some things, and it was just really cumbersome to use. So you might want to look at just making it easier for somebody to give back answers. Just a thought.
Okay, thank
But
you.
it's a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, we have a comment in the chat. Someone else had the same problem. Um,
They
question in, oh, go ahead, Christine.
if I can help resolve some of those if they were to shoot us an email, um, or if we jot down those names, I can help solve some of those issues if people still want to fill it out.
Yeah, are you guys able to drop your emails in the chat?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, then they can reach out directly to you. We have another question. How does AMATS fit in with the Anchorage Municipal 20-year plan?
Pretty similar to transit in the fact that we use whatever the municipality has in place for their long range planning as part of our long range planning, our metropolitan transportation plan, our transportation plan that we mentioned earlier. We also use the 2040 land use plan map because basically, as part of our transportation plan, we say, what does the land use look like in the future as well? That's how we get an idea of, okay, how do people commute? How do people travel? Or where are they going? And so we look at the 2040 land use plan, we look at the 2020 comprehensive plan for goals and objectives, and we kind of match up with those so we can get the local perspective integrated into our process. One of the big things we're doing is with the next transportation plan update is the municipality of Anchorage recently developed or recently adopted their long range transportation strategies document, the LRTS. We're doing an update on our transportation plan to review those strategies and see if our current goals and objectives meet those or if we need to update our goals and objectives to reflect those strategies. One of the other things we'll probably be looking at is the LRTS set like a mode share target. Basically what kind of mode share they want, how many people they want biking and walking and driving by a set time period. We're going to be looking at, do we want to do that as AMATs and match up with what the Muni has, or do we want to do something a little bit different?
And when you say we, who are you talking about? Is that the subcommittees? Is that staff? How do those decisions get made? And what happens when those decisions don't connect, or maybe different priorities with plans from the Muni or plans from the state?
Yeah, so we is basically all of us. So all the above. So AMAT staff kind of starts the process and gets recommendations put together, runs it through the committees, and then runs it up, through the TAC and policy committee. And we do our very best to align where possible. I mean, one of the things we want people to recognize is that we are a federally required organization and we have the federal process that we have to follow. So there are certain things we can and can't do as part of our overall process. So we align where possible, but there may be some disagreements at the policy level where they say, okay, that's great that this plan says this, but we want to head in a different direction because of other reasons. One of the other things to think about is there can be a long time between when a plan at the local level is developed and when we're doing our MTP. So you could have a plan developed in, the early 2000s and now we're in 2025 updating the plan and people are like, "Why aren't you adhering to that plan that was developed in the early 2000s?" Well, a lot's changed since then and that plan maybe it has not been updated. So it's something that we have to kind of make sure we weigh and we think about. And that's why we engage with the community to be like, do these goals and objectives look good? Do they match with the plans that are out there? Are these projects in alignment with what people want? And we often get a lot of updates based on that.
Cool, thank you. Does anybody in the audience have a question or something they want to jump in on? Wait a second. So does AMATS then see what federal funds can be used or asked for percentage? What about when no funds are available? Might have to provide some clarity with that question, James.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're asking on that one? I can take a stab at it. So yeah, we oversee all federal funds regardless of well, there are funds that come in. We use the plans to help prioritize the funding that comes in. So AMATS gets a set allocation per year of funding. The Department of Transportation for Alaska gets a set amount of funding per year. Then there's funding for transit. And we oversee all of that and put it towards projects that are supported by the policy committee. And at this point, the funds are never ending. If there comes a date when there are no more funds available from the federal government, well, I don't know what we're going to do.
And just to follow up on that, why does AMATS exist? Like, why do we need an AMATS if we have an Anchorage plan and, um, there's neighborhood plans? Why do we need an AMATS?
Well, two reasons. One, it's federally required, so we have to exist whether people want us or not. And two, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of it came about because of how the federal government and state DOTs in the past would come in and do these large scale mega projects in locations where they would disproportionately impact low income and minority households. And so, one of the solutions to that was to create these MPOs that are supposed to be um, kind of the local, making sure that the local perspective or the people who live there are actually part of the process and that they're aware of something is going on. So then they don't open their door one day and be like, oh, there's a highway right in front of my front yard.
Thank you. Question in the chat: how does AMATS interact with the STIP?
Yeah, the
And if
STIP.
you
So
wouldn't
the
mind
STIP, yeah,
explaining the STIP for us.
the STIP is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. So think of it as the large older brother of our TIP, of our funding program. So the STIP is the state DOT's responsibility. That's very similar to ours. That basically says in the next 4 years, here's what projects, transportation projects, are going to be funded with what money, and they do a combination of state and federal money. So there's a lot of different ways that we interact, but the two primary is we provide comments on the STIP where when comment periods are open, we make sure to let people know that it's available. And our funding program, the TIP, has to be in the STIP because basically all federal projects, surface transportation projects within the AMATS area, have to be in the TIP, and then the TIP is incorporated into the STIP. So it's one of the reasons why we have to do a lot of close coordination between the MPO and the state DOT.
And then how does that connect with the CIP?
Um, well, it doesn't really necessarily. It depends. So the CIP is the capital improvement program for the municipality. It's the local funding towards their transportation projects. If they're going to use federal funding on one of those projects, it has to be in the TIP. If they're not going to use federal funding, then it doesn't have to be in the TIP. And we just try and keep aware of it so we don't have a duplication of efforts. When it comes to our transportation plan, we account for what's in the CIP. So we can say, okay, here's what the state's funding with their state funding. Here's what the locals funding with their local funding. So we can have a complete picture of everything that's going on in our community, our area. So we can be like, okay, we really know what the transportation system is going to look like in the next 20 years.
Thank you. And we have another question in the chat. Can AMATS provide funding for bike and pedestrian improvements as standalone projects or only in combination with a road project? I think you mentioned two projects that are bike only or bike and walking only.
Yeah, so we can do that. It's typically not the largest share of our funding. The largest share typically goes towards complete streets projects, so streets and then a mixture of active transportation, transit as part of them. But we do provide funding for active transportation, so bike and pedestrian, bike, walk, roll, that kind of stuff. And that can be things like sidewalk improvements, a new pathway, on street facilities like bike lanes, that kind of stuff. We can do that.
Thanks. And I do want to talk a little bit about the subcommittees. Do you guys have positions on the subcommittees? What would be the requirements for people who wanted to sign up? And then what would it mean for somebody to serve? Like kind of, can you give us like a little job description if somebody's interested in pursuing a subcommittee?
Yes, we do have subcommittee positions available for members of the public. We have subcommittees available for various agencies or organizations. Christine can speak more on that in a minute if you want. And I guess the subcommittees are really about what you as an individual want to bring to the committees. You know, what kind of interests do you have? There are certain things that we have to bring through the committees. So, our funding program, our transportation plan, we have to bring it forward to the committee members and say, hey, we need you to start reviewing this and provide feedback to us. I will say it can be overwhelming at times, not to scare anybody away, but just it can be a commitment at times. And as I'm sure you all see, AMATs can be complicated. So, you know, some people typically spend a lot of time at the beginning getting familiar with AMATs, who we are and what we do. But a lot of the subcommittees are what you make of it. You know, what kind of time commitment do you want? What kind of things do you want to bring to the committees? Recognize that we do have kind of boundaries on them a little bit. We're really supposed to be focusing on transportation related things. And so, as long as you kind of keep that in mind, I think the committees can be pretty beneficial for everybody.
Question in the chat, has the 50 million funding been pretty steady? Could AMATS get last year? I am assuming that's federal funding.
Yeah, so that's federal funding. So a lot of it is dependent upon the what Congress does with what's called the reauthorization bills or authorization bills, the transportation bills. So basically, every 4 years or so, or 2 to 4 years, depends on what it is. Congress gets together and says, "Here's what we're going to put towards transportation. Here's how much money each state is going to get. Here's how much money MPOs get, etc." So 50 million has actually been going up. We used to be 30 million. We've been getting more different pots of funding over the years. So 50 million is kind of all of our pots of funding put together. Um, a lot of it will depend on what this Congress is going to do. The next transportation bill is set to expire at the end of this federal fiscal year. So September 30th of 26, it's set to expire. And we have to wait and see what they are going to do. Um, you know, I think there's been some concern that there's going to be a pulling back of funding for federal side of things. I think a lot of it will remain pretty consistent. I think a lot of the stuff that was added with the last authorization bill, what are called discretionary grants, basically where you can apply for the grant and get it for projects. I think a lot of those are going to go away, and it's really going to be kind of the set allocations that go towards specific groups, such as AMATS or the state. And there'll be a lot less flexibility than there has been in the past. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind. But I think our overall amount is going to stay pretty steady over the coming years.
And is that amount allocated per person, or is there like how do they decide how much Anchorage gets?
Okay, so it's basically what happens is Congress says here's how much goes to the state of Alaska for this particular pot of funding, whatever it may be. And then the state of Alaska has to say, okay, there are MPOs in our area, our state, so we have to separate out a portion of those to the MPOs. AMATS, we are the largest MPO in the state. We are over 200,000, which kind of puts us into the next highest category. We're called a transportation management area. And because of that, we actually get a set allocation. So the state doesn't decide how much we get. Congress basically set in federal regulation how much goes to us as an MPO. So we get all of it because we are an MPO of 200,000 or greater, and we're the only one. They typically break them down based on population amounts. You have under 50,000, so like 49,999 population has an amount. And then there's 50,000 to less than 200,000 has their own amount, and then greater than 200,000 has their amount. So we get all of it. It's super
Uh,
complicated. So
well, it feels like it's really complicated for states that have a lot of NPOs, and for us, it's maybe less complicated because we don't have. How many are there in Alaska?
there are three. There's one in Anchorage. Then there's one in Matsu. That's a brand new one. It's called Matsu Valley for Planning MVP. And then there's one in Fairbanks for FAST. Yeah, it can get really complicated in states where you have not only a lot of MPOs, but you have MPOs that cross state boundaries.
Mm,
So you have a multi-state jurisdiction of an MPO. We're very fortunate up here as AMATS, where the only one in the country that we know about where we have one local government as part of our organization, and that's the
mm.
municipality of Anchorage. Most have two or more. Like in Matsu, they have the borough, then they have the cities, then they have the tribes. So we're kind of a unique MPO. And it's fun to go to the conferences and be like, well, we only have to deal with this. And everybody's like, you have it so much easier than us.
Why doesn't it cover all of the municipality?
That's actually up to the policy committee. So past practice was it was only okay. So MPOs are determined based on census data. So we look at census tracts, and we have to make sure that all of the urbanized areas within within our area is part of our MPO. That's kind of our minimum, plus any area that's expected to grow over the next 20 years. Beyond that, the policy committee could say, okay, we want to get bigger outside of those urbanized areas or areas that are expected to grow for transportation related purposes, even if there's not going to be any growth there, as long as we're within our like census designated zones, basically. And for us, we have the full municipality of Anchorage and the full Matsu borough as our kind of designated zone that we could expand our boundary to cover. Now we can't overlap other MPO boundaries. So now that there's another MPO out there, we can't, we can't encompass that MPO. They have their own thing, but we could do everything around them if we wanted to. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense for us to do that, but there has been some discussion. Should we expand our boundary to cover all of the municipality of Anchorage? In the past, it's always said no because there's no density along the Turnagain Arm. When you get to Indian Bird and Gird, there's a little bit of density, but there's really not in between there. So it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for us to have that full boundary. However, as time has gone on, it's gotten more confusing for people. They're like, why don't you cover the entire municipality of Anchorage? Why can't you plan for the Girdwood area? And, think about that in your planning. And that's just the decision the policy committee has to make at some point.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions, it seems like we're wrapping up. I have one more. What happens to emergency needs? Like, say, something happens to a bridge or a major roadway, earthquake. Is AMATS able to step in those scenarios and provide any funding?
No, that actually falls on the municipality of Anchorage or the state of Alaska. They're really the ones that are positioned to be able to do that. Our process is about kind of the long term, slower, get things funded, get the projects implemented. If it's something that's an emergency like earthquake or disaster relief, that's all the muni and the state on their own. We know about it and participate in helping where needed, get communications out and that kind of stuff, but we don't provide funding for that.
Okay, well, do we have anybody else online with a question?
I could just note what I put in the chat unless,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that for the
please do.
committee. Yeah, and I just pulled that from our most recent newsletter, but for the bike and pedestrian, we do have 3 open seats. One's just a public member, so that can be anybody. One member is to represent a business organization, so also some flexibility there, and then a representative of a community or environmental organization. So there's a range of flexibility there. And on our community advisory committee, we 6 of those seats are just by district, and right now the District 5 seat is open. So we're looking for applications. And the link I put in the chat is just on public input, that will take you to the committee page so you can see all 5 committees and you can see their page and maybe learn a little bit more. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to us.
Thank you. And I would assume District 5, but you have to live within AMATS boundary. So if you were like a Turning Arm resident, you wouldn't be able to participate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hasn't come up, but
But an important distinction.
yes.
Aaron just dropped there was a question in the chat, where do I find the map? Aaron dropped it. When we post this on our website, all the links that they've posted, we will attach to that. And then if you watch this on YouTube, you should be able to find in the description. If there's no other questions, we're going to end a little bit early. I want to thank Christine and Aaron so much for coming. I look forward to hearing more about AMATS and having people understand an important part of funding road projects in Anchorage. And if you have any questions, their emails are also in the chat, and we will link them below. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.